welcome to HL7 FHIR DevDays and to this presentation of the versatility of Smart on FHIR. My name is Quintonn Rothmann. I'm an interoperability developer with the Code Creation Lab at Lineate. I have extensive experience with .NET and Java development. I'm Rhapsody Expert certified. And then I also have experience with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and these will be the most relevant for this presentation. For this presentation, I will start by explaining what we've built and why Smart on FHIR is so versatile. We'll also cover a few key assumptions and some key concepts, and then we will go over the basic application that we've built, as well as a demonstration of the web version of the application. And then I will go into a bit more detail of how we've developed the mobile application, as well as the demonstration of the mobile application. The purpose of this presentation is to demonstrate the benefits and versatility of Smart on FHIR. To demonstrate this, we've built a very basic queue management application. And by using a single code base, we are able to connect to and retrieve data from multiple different EHRs. We can further add or remove an EHR from our platform without having to change any code. Our app can be deployed on multiple different platforms, that being the web, as well as mobile devices. And all of this is possible because of the versatility of Smart on FHIR. There are a couple of assumptions that we've made for this presentation. Firstly, we assume anyone watching this presentation has a basic understanding of FHIR, including knowledge about FHIR resources and FHIR servers. And then also a very basic understanding or awareness of Smart on FHIR. And for anyone who wants to take a look at the source code that I will be sharing later in this presentation, some knowledge of GitHub is required as all the source code is in GitHub. And the code for the application in this presentation is a combination of HTML and JavaScript, as well as a little bit of CSS. So some knowledge of those will be required for anyone who wants to take a look at the source code. There are a couple of key concepts I want to highlight before going further. The first one is the Smart App Launch Framework. And this is the framework that allows smart apps to launch and connect to electronic health record data. This also enables smart apps to make use of existing infrastructure such as login screens and user credentials. There are 4 use cases within the Smart App Launch Framework, and those are for patient applications to launch by themselves or standalone, for patient applications to launch from within a portal, and then also for provider apps to launch either standalone or from within a portal. And our app is a standalone patient application because the users of the application will be the patients. And then Apache Cordova is the technology that will allow us to take the code for the Smart app and deploy it as a mobile application. In other words, Cordova makes it possible to build mobile applications using web technologies such as HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The Smart app we have built for this presentation is a basic queue management system, which will allow patients to see their status in a queue and where they need to go within a facility. On the technical side, the app is hosted by GitHub Pages, which automatically exposes our code as a web page over the internet. And this is required for the EHRs to be able to redirect users to our app once they have authenticated with the EHR. The internal workflow of the app starts when a user launches the app, and as it starts, the app will download a list of available EHRs in the background from our backend server. The user will then select the EHR they are at. This will then redirect them to the EHR login screen where they can log in with their credentials that they already have with that EHR. So there is no need for a second username and password just for the user to log into our app. And once authenticated, the user will be seamlessly redirected into our application where they will see their queue status. And all of this redirection is handled by the Smart on FHIR framework. It actually sounds a lot more complicated than it is to implement. Our solution consists of a number of components. First, we have our backend or web server, and for this we are using Rhapsody. This is where the app will download the list of EHRs and the user's queue status from. And then the Smart app consists of 3 parts. The first part is the main app. This is where the user starts by either visiting a website or by launching the app on their smartphone. From here, the user will select an EHR, which will then redirect them to a patient launch page. And this will start the Smart App Launch Framework and present the user with a login screen. Once authenticated, the user is redirected to our redirect page. This last page is used to detect when the user has been fully authenticated. All of this is invisible to the end user, and they will not be aware of these different components. This separation of components is needed for us to be able to deploy our Smart App in the web as well as on mobile devices. Parts of the Smart App launch framework allow EHRs to require that Smart Apps register with the EHR. This ensures that only authorized applications have access to the EHR data, as well as control what data they can access. For this presentation, we are using two public EHRs. The first one is the Cerner Sandbox, which does require registration. To register with Cerner, we need to provide a redirect URI. This is where the user is redirected once they are authenticated. We also have to specify the different scopes for our app, which is basically saying what information we need to access and what type of access we need. In other words, if we need to write or read the data. Once registered, we are provided with a client ID and the FHIR URL. This URL is used to start the Smart App launch framework. And the second one is the Smart Health IT Sandbox, which does not require registration. All we have to do is to choose the launch type, and as I've mentioned, our app uses the patient standalone launch. And all we really need from here is the FHIR server URL that we need for the Smart App launch framework. And I will share links to both of these at the end of the presentation. Now we are ready to do the demonstration. The first demonstration I'm going to do is using just one EHR. I'll start with the Smart Health IT. And then without changing any code or having to do anything on the application, I'll be able to add a second EHR and have the user log in to the second EHR using the login screen, the login credentials from the second EHR. Okay, so now I've opened up my browser. I'll paste in the URL, the website that the user will launch. And if I look at the drop-down, there's just one EHR. That's the Smart Health IT. I'll select that and I'll click Login. This will then redirect to the patient launch page, which then opens up the login screen. And this login is specific to the Smart Health IT. I'll enter the user ID. The password for Smart Health is irrelevant. And then we get redirected back to our application. And as you can see, we've obtained the patient name and the patient MRN. And this is retrieved directly from the Smart Health IT FHIR server using the FHIR client, which is part of the Smart on FHIR. And then from our backend server, we've obtained the status. Next, I will head over to our backend server, which in this case is Rhapsody Integration Engine. And I will open up the code that we have for retrieving the EHRs. And I'm adding the Cerner EHR with the details that I've registered on the EHR sandbox. And once I check this in, the changes will be applied to my server and I should see it in the web page. Back in the web page, if I now click the back button to go back to the home page, in the drop-down, there's now two EHRs. So in this case, I'll choose the Cerner EHR. I'll click the login. Again, there's some redirection happening. This time we are presented with a Cerner login screen. And I'll log in with a patient credential specific to the Cerner EHR. And then the redirection happens and we end up with this screen. This has an extra step because of the security around the Cerner EHR where we had to register. The patient is now being asked, do they approve of this Lineate application to access their data? And also because the patient has children, they have to confirm if they are logging in on their own behalf or on behalf of their children. So we'll just log in as this patient for herself. And then the redirection happens and we end up back on our status page. A couple of things I would like to highlight from that demonstration. The first one is we have not built any login screens into our application, and yet in the demonstration we saw two different login screens. And the reason for that is because of the Smart on FHIR framework, the EHRs provide the login screens and they take care of the credentials and authentication. And the second one is we don't have a database where we are storing any patient information or patient data. Because of the FHIR APIs, we are able to retrieve patient demographics and patient information for our application. So we don't have to take care and manage and store patient data. Next, I'm going to show the same application running as a mobile application on my phone. The mobile application will be using the exact same code as the web-based application, all thanks to Apache Cordova. The workflow for creating a mobile version of the app is to create a new Cordova app, then copy the source files to the appropriate folders, and then to run or deploy the app to an Android, iOS, or Windows device. In our app, we've automated most of this using a build script, which is quite common in web development. I will be sharing links to the code a little bit later if anyone would like to take a look at how we've done all of this. And now I'm displaying my cell phone. I'm using an application called FHIR, which allows me to display my mobile phone onto the computer. So this is not an emulator or any kind of simulator. This is actually my mobile phone. And here we have the Lineate queue management system, and I will launch it. As you can see, we have the same login screen as before. With the drop down, you can see the two EHRs. I'll again select Cerner. We'll click the login button. We get redirected to the login screen. I'll enter the same credentials again. And we'll log in. And we should get redirected back to the same page where we have to approve access to the application. Basically to give the application access to our data, and also to confirm which user we are logging in, whether it's ourselves or one of our children. We allow access, and we get redirected right back to our application. Once again, I'd like to point out that we've been able to do this without having to change any code or write any different code. We've been able to log into different EHRs, see different login screens, and access the same application. And if you recall, the entire workflow I discussed in the beginning of the presentation, where the user is redirected from the main application to the patient page to the redirect page. But in both the web application and in the mobile application, the user is never aware of any of it. It all seems as though it's one application. And that is all thanks to the power of Smart on FHIR and the versatility of Smart on FHIR. And that concludes my presentation. If you would like to ask me any questions, or if you want to get in touch with me, you can contact me on the Wova app during DevDays, or you can reach me on my email address on the screen. And now I think there's some time for some Q&A. Also on the screen, I've shared a link to the GitHub repository where the source code for our application is. There's also a link to the Cerner tutorial to build your own Smart on FHIR application. There's also a link to the Cerner portal where you can register your application. Also a link to the Smart Health IT, where you can generate a launch URL for the Smart Health IT EHR, and also the Smart Health IT patient ID that we use to log in for that presentation. I look forward to your questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Quintonn. Hello, everyone. This is Sadhana Alangar, HL7's Director of Education. Welcome to the Working Smarter with Smart on FHIR presentation. Quintonn is here to answer your questions. And Quintonn, I see that the questions have already started coming in. Do you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. I'm just reading here. See the one question for the mobile app. This assumes that the Smart on FHIR API is exposed to the internet. So yes, for the mobile app, the API needs to be exposed over the internet. And that is why, for example, with the Cerner EHR, you have to register and you get a specific client ID that goes into your app. And also, usually you'll be restricted to certain resources. So you might only be able to read patient data. You won't be able to push patient data or write patient data. So that is a potential something you need to be aware of for the whole Smart on FHIR framework to work over a mobile app. It needs to be open to the internet. If you're just going to build a smart app to work on web browsers, it doesn't necessarily need to be available over the internet, just over the local network where the smart app and the EHR will be. So if it's just within one hospital, it wouldn't need to be available over the internet, just within that hospital's network. And the GitHub link. So I think the presentation will become, I think the presentation might already be available in the Wova app. On the left, there's a documents menu. And if you just click on there, you'll be able to get my presentation. Otherwise, I'll add the link anyway into the chat in just a few minutes. I just need to get it. Is there any, so there's another question. is there any data transformation happening between Rhapsody and the EHR? So for this demonstration, there was none. The data from the EHR doesn't go through Rhapsody for this presentation. We could have done that if we needed to do some special kind of transformation, but in this case, that wasn't happening. It's just with the app is just using the FHIR APIs. There's actually a JavaScript FHIR client or SDK, and we were just completely making use of that to get the patient demographics. The only thing we got from Rhapsody was the list of EHRs and also then the status that we displayed in the middle of the app. And there's another question. Have you tried mashing up data from multiple FHIR sources in a single smart app? How would that work? I have not tried that. I'm not sure how that would work because whenever you, with the FHIR SDK or the API, you give it the client's credentials, the app you registered with Cerner, for example, and then it goes to the login screen and comes back. So if you try to link to a second one, I'm not sure how that would work from a smart app, but within the Smart on FHIR framework, there is another way to retrieve data from an EHR via the back end integration, where it doesn't require users to log in, and you just get like a secret key or something for your server to be able to connect to the EHR. And I'm guessing that would be the way to go if you need to retrieve data from multiple EHRs, because probably in that case, you would have to handle the user login and storing all of the user data. Next question. Is your app SPA, a single page application? Are we using public key cryptography standards? So this demo app was just a React app. I'm trying to just think in terms of single page application. Where did it go? I'm just looking at the question. So it's just a regular React app. And are we using public key cryptography standards? Well, the app's just using HTTPS to make the calls, which are part of the FHIR standard, but we haven't pinned any certificates or anything like that. I think that might be possible, but in this demonstration, we haven't done any of that. Next question. How do you deal with token access and refresh, and where do you store them? So the FHIR API, the FHIR SDK actually does that for me. Once you log in, it stores I think it stores the session data in a cookie, and then when you make requests, it takes care of that for you. And that's also part of why the Smart on FHIR framework is so useful. You don't have to do a lot of that. And the same with the OAuth, the whole login process. I don't have to pass the credentials to the server to get a token and track the expiration of the token. It's all sort of handled by the FHIR API. Let me see if there are any more questions. So that's, I think, all the questions. I'll keep wondering if there are more.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Quintonn. I think we are out of time. David says, thanks for the clear presentation and answers and the demos, I think. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for all the questions. I appreciate them. And if anybody, I would like to encourage people to do check out Smart on FHIR. It's pretty useful and it doesn't get a lot of attention. So do go ahead and take a look into Smart on FHIR.
The slide deck has been uploaded to the document section of FHIR. You can get it, you can download it from there. Once again, thank you, big thank you, Quintonn. Thanks everyone for joining us today. And please don't forget to rate this session. This is Sadhana Alangar, HL7's Director of Education, signing off.